What's up, YouTube? This is Too Raw for TV. All right, so before I get into this video, shout out to the brother Kita Auto for the $10 donation to the channel via the PayPal. And basically, he wants me to talk about the Malice at the Palace, which of course was the infamous brawl that occurred between the 2004-2005 Indiana Pacers and 2004-2005 Detroit Pistons, who at the time were the defending NBA champions, having upsetted the Los Angeles Lakers in the prior season's NBA Finals. And he said he had been rewatching footage of the Malice at the Palace. I believe there was a documentary that came out a couple of years ago about the Malace at the Palace. And I'm going to tell you something, up until recently, it was very difficult for a couple of years to find any video of the Malace at the Palace. The NBA had been trying to hide that for years. But he wanted my opinion on it, right? So I think I've said this quite a few times. This was, I believe it happened on November 19th, 2004. It was a Friday night. And I believe the game aired on ESPN. And this was a marquee matchup at the time because the Detroit Pistons, of course, were the NBA champions, as I said before. A team that consisted, starting lineup at least, it consisted of Ben Wallace, Rasheed Wallace, I believe Tayshaun Prince, Rip Hamilton, and Chauncey Billups. And the head coach at the time, I believe the head coach was Larry Brown. And the Pacers team at that time, I believe Rick Carlisle had taken over as head coach by that point over Isaiah Thomas. I think the team was Reggie. Let me see. What was that team? I think it was Jermaine O'Neal, Steven Jackson, Ron Artest. I know Reggie Miller was still there. I don't remember whether Reggie was still starting, though. I don't think he was. Was he still starting? I can't remember. I don't think he was starting anymore, but I think he was getting quality minutes. I can't remember everybody was on the Pacers, though. So long ago. Austin Crocier, whatever. I got the main players down. And the Pacers, at that point in time, were dog walking the league, man. I can't remember the records, but I remember them being a very, very good team. A team that ultimately had championship aspirations. And Ron Artest, even though the season was really young, very, very young, he was starting off, he was having the best start of his NBA career. He was actually putting up all-star numbers playing with this Pacers team. So what I remember was the Pacers was beating the hell out of the Pistons at Detroit. They was beating the hell out of them. And from what I understand, Ben Wallace, I think he was pissed off about a foul that had occurred. He still was steaming about a foul that had occurred in the years prior playoffs against the Pacers, I think it was. So I think that, plus I think, I'm trying to remember some of the details, man, but I think he had also some stuff going on in his personal life. But whatever the case may be, he got fouled hard by Ron Artest. Big Ben Wallace did not respond. He didn't take that well. He pushed goddamn Ron Artest all the way to Bermuda. And, look, Ron Artest ain't really want no part of that shit. So Ron Artest, I remember he laid out on the scores table and basically was chilling and shit. You know what I'm saying? Now, you could say that his behavior was uncouth, whatever. A fan throws, I think it was a beer at him, and he went ballistic. And I remember earlier that evening, I think I was at Shoney's. I was at some restaurant earlier. At the time, I'm 24, so I'm 20 years younger than I am now. I'm 24 years old. I was with my sister-in-law and and her brother-in-law, or her cousin, excuse me. And I think I'm trying to remember what restaurant we was at. I think we were at we were at some restaurant, man. I can't remember anymore, but we were at some restaurant. We was watching the game on ESPN, and this was like earlier, like second quarter, early third. And I think we left sometime midway in the third quarter. And at the time, I think I was visiting my sister-in-law and my brother. When we get to their house, the game is in the final minutes. So as I'm turning the television on, because I want to see what happened, I'm right there, literally a minute before it all unfolds. And I could not believe what I was watching. I couldn't believe it. I had seen some things before. I had seen, when Vernon Maxwell ran to the stands and attacked that fan that said something about his a dead daughter, I believe it was, which is understandable. I don't care what nobody says. But I had never seen anything like before in my life. You know what I'm saying? Not from a sports perspective. Yeah, we had seen 9/11 and nothing trumps that. But this, from a sports perspective, I had never seen anything like that in the NBA. So I see the players go in the stands. I see fans come out on the court. It's mayhem. And the thing that sticked out to me the most is that when I rewatched footage of the Malace at the Palace, right? People go say I always try to make things about race. But I can't help but notice that when the Pacers players were going into the tunnel into the back, right, and they're running away from all this madness, right, I noticed that the fans, if you look at the video, the fans are only throwing things at the black players. No one can spin it. Nobody can refute what I'm saying. It's a fact. When you look at the video, the fans are only throwing things at the black players and the black assistants. So you take that how you want to take it. Now, when that actually occurred, my initial thoughts were shock, right? But then when I started reflecting on the ramifications of all of this, I said to myself, the NBA as I know it and enjoy it is going to end very soon. It's going to end. Number one, the majority of fans had already been complaining about the game, talking about how the game had got bogged down and the pace was as slow as a snail, and defense and physicality had gotten too dominant a factor in these games. The scoring was so low, the league average was down to 93 points a game. We had some games where scoring was only in the 70s and 80s. You know, the game could be sloppy at times, and it just wasn't as some people put it, an exciting brand of basketball, which I totally disagree with, because I love defense, I love block shots, I love physicality. I'm in a small minority of fans that love defense. Um, you know, but that would not help. If you're having complaints about physicality, if you have players fighting, that's going to be a problem. This was not just a black eye to those involved. This was a huge black eye to the NBA. Also, I'm not going to sugarcoat this and dance around this. In the post Michael Jordan era, hell, you can make an argument that this was a problem in the post Larry Bird era. But Michael Jordan's greatness, his mega superstardom, was able to cover up some of the small tears that were starting to open up in the NBA. But once he retired, at least the Jordan version that we cared about the most, the Chicago Bulls version, there were some things people were starting to say. And it kind of was reminiscent of what they used to say in the 70s. Oh, the game has gotten too, what's the word they would use? Urban. The game has gotten too urban. Well, by the late 90s, they would say the game has gotten too hip-hop-ish. You stop hearing, Randy Newman's I Love L.A., and then you start hearing more Biggie and Tupac and Nas, and some people didn't like that. Players, the shorts started getting baggier. My generation, we were, late teens and 20s, we would grow our afros out and get cornrows. You know what I'm saying? Tattoos, not the Rodman type tattoo. There's nothing wrong with that. But we started getting tattoos, and Allen Iverson was a reflection of hip hop culture, and they hated him. But, they love him now. But back then, Allen Iverson was anathema to Middle America. And, you saw this situation occurring where David Stern was not liking the product. And that situation in Malace the Palace was the justification needed to make changes. So what happened? After the 2004-2005 season, right? Where we had at the time the lowest rated NBA finals in history, Spurs versus Pistons. The league made subtle changes. First thing they did was make changes to the game as far as taking away defense. Guys who were making their bones in the NBA on their defense, guys like Roger Bell, guys like Bruce Bowen. Now all of a sudden, Ruben Patterson, these guys were not as valuable anymore. Because what used to be called great defense, these guys were now fouling out. So you couldn't be as physical. They took hand checking away totally. First, they had taken away hand checking technically a decade earlier, but now you couldn't use your elbows. You couldn't use anything. You had to only use your feet. Right? And this was worsened by the freedom of movement rule, which was passed around 2018, 2019. Right? So the first changes in the game occurred almost directly because of the Malace at the Palace. And, another thing, by them opening up the game a little bit, making it easier for perimeter players to score, ultimately in later years, they phased out the traditional big man, and now the big man is more of a stretch big, although you still have some bigs, and we had a little bit of recurrence of the original traditional big man recently, so that's a good thing. But the game started becoming more Europeanized. Started seeing more Europeans coming to the league because, hey, if we can't have an American-born white great player, well, we're going to usher them in from Europe. And then, Steve Nash was a great beneficiary of the rule changes. He went from being a solid point guard to a star. He won 2 league MVPs. Now, am I saying he didn't deserve both or any of them? Kinda. There was some politics behind it. So these are some of the things that were ramifications uh, of the Mouse of the Palace. That the game that I saw that night, I knew was over. The days were numbered as far as how many days I'm going to have left to enjoy this brand of basketball. Also, it totally destroyed the championship aspirations of that 2004-2005 team. Had that never occurred, Reggie Miller might have walked out with a championship. Had that not occurred, Ron Artest, aka Metta World Peace, the trajectory of his career could have been different because he never was able to quite regain or recapture the level of basketball, at least from an offensive standpoint, he was playing it at that time. So that's how I look at it. And yes, I do believe that as far as the actual melee that occurred, that was 100% the fans' fault. They the one that threw the first shots. They're the ones that were on the court. It was their fault. They were assholes and they deserved everything they got. Not saying everything the players did was right, but you know what I'm saying? I don't get this thing where people think that players, especially black players, are supposed to just stand there and take it. Because if we got to go this route, look, I've talked about how Ty Cobb beat up a man with no hands in the stands. He went into the stands because he called Ty Cobb a half N-word, which I guess was an insult that Ty Cobb couldn't stand for. And he beat up a guy that I think he was deformed. He didn't have any hands. He might have been a World War II veteran, lost hands. I don't know, but he beat him up. Now imagine that happening today. But anyway, that's how I feel about this situation. Tell me what you guys think.